and they sort of view council as like cherries on the cake, just be sort of waved at and patted on the head occasionally. That is not acceptable. We are negotiating hard on behalf of the taxpayer. And the third key item I want to raise this morning is the really, really important and difficult issue of SEND, special educational needs and disabilities for children. This is actually, it goes to the core of who we are. And actually for me, it's also quite personal. A very dear friend of mine who had not one but two children in a wheelchair, the struggles that he had and his wife to secure the provision that they obviously needed was extraordinary. And in my own extended family, young lad at primary school, told he would need a bit of extra support, and he got that at school. He was never going to be an Oxbridge candidate. Didn't go to uni, was done brilliantly, fantastic job, doing well. To be told by a psychologist in your early 20s that you've got a problem, that you're labelled, that you need to take medication is frankly, and that medication might be for the long term. I think that's outrageous. And what is going on is that SEND is in crisis. And I've been specifically asked by council officers, directors of services, to tell it as it is. We all want the very best provision for the most deserving. I reiterate that absolutely. But there is a crisis of overdiagnosis of children with neurodiverse issues. And you can come up with all sorts of new labels. But when you hear that EHCPs, educational health and care plans, are 3 times the level they were 8 to 10 years ago, and that they're increasing in many councils now by between 8 to 10% a year, you say, hang on, our beloved children, they are not 10% more in need every single year. Basic common sense tells you that. So you say, what is going on? What is going on here with this overdiagnosis? And there's a whole bunch of factors. But the state and all of us, we're all suffering. In a sense, we're being sort of, in inverted commas, we've been given a bad deal. But the people who suffer the most are the children. Since the Children and Families Act 2014, well-intentioned, we've no doubt, outcomes have got worse, in particular for the most needy. Think about that. 10 billion a year and counting and rising, and your outcomes are getting worse. And you get a situation where, in a sense, you've got taxi firms making off like bandits. I discovered a taxi firm, not in one of our councils, with a 4.2 million contract and only 10 drivers apparently. Nice work if you can get it. Or they're not telling the truth. When you've got educational therapists and psychologists, they're doing so much reviews and assessments and reports, they actually haven't got time to do the intervention and the thought and the support and the therapy. That's coming from the Association of Directors of Children's Services. You know, this is seriously going wrong. And the government has announced a supposed white paper, but it has been delayed and the can has been kicked down the road. And one of the key issues here is these EHCPs. Middle-class parents are playing the game. In order to save the VAT on independent school fees, if you get an EHCP, you don't pay the VAT. So they're employing solicitors in order to file their claims. You've got other parents. If you get an EHCP, you qualify for PIP, which qualifies you for a motability vehicle. 3 years free insurance, servicing and recovery. That sits on the drive whilst you demand a taxi to pick your child up and take it to school. This is insane, and we have to call it out. No doubt there'll be a torrent of abuse pouring in, that's fine. Compared to net zero and Brexit, it is nothing. But we just have to be honest with people about what's going on here. It's just not fair. And it's not fair for the children most in need, who are not getting the provision they require in the speed they require it. And When I talk to the experts and teachers, they tell me children don't need an EHCP report every single year that might cost between £2,000 and £4,000 each one. You do the maths on 9,000 EHCPs in one council, it's 25 to 30 million quid. It only needs to be done once every key stage. This is serious money, and it's not going in the right place, and the outcomes are getting worse. And we can change this, the government can change this, and it's absolutely vital that they do. And in a sense, they have our support. And by me telling it as it is and making a constructive suggestion, what they should do, rather than be fearful of their own backbenchers, join a trial. Let's have a cross-party trial. You could take 1 or 2 councils that are led by each of the parties, and you could say for a year or 18 months, we're not going to do annual EHCP reviews. We're not going to allow taxis to take those children to school. Why? Because actually, children are better off being taken to school by their parents or with friends. Which does bring me on to the whole issue of the school transport, which needs a review. Most people will, I'm sure, remember that the School Transport Act was 1944. It's 80 years old. It's not unreasonable to have a review of it and to look again. And I think we should, and I think a cross-party consensus that this is a crisis that is completely out of control. And if we don't address it, folks, in 4 or 5 or 6 years' time, there'll be no potholes filled. There'll be no bins collected. All of the money will be going on send. And we all know that is totally unsustainable. So we're just being candid with people. Those are the 3 big things that I wanted to update people on today. The pensions, the sort of contract savings we're making, and send. And I think it's so important to be honest and candid about it. Changing send requires us changes to some of the legislation, and if this government doesn't do it, I promise you a reform government will. In terms of the future, well, there's some exciting opportunities. AI will help to improve customer service for council service users, taxpayers, and help with smarter processes. And I think everybody is looking forward to that, and we're talking to some very, very interesting specialists and experts who we want to put in competition with each other. That's why we'll use different people. Then the other area, which is exciting to me, is property portfolios. Billions and billions and billions of pounds of property is owned by these councils. Last Friday, I looked down a list of 1,000 properties in just one council. But I know that with better asset management, we can increase revenues, increase values, sell properties where suitable to pay off debt. So there's a huge amount of extra value to be achieved there. And then, of course, we all suffer from inflation, and I know the press are very focused on what our council tax rates will be next year. Well, obviously, no decisions have been made. People have got slightly ahead of themselves, seeing draft papers and the like. Plus or minus, I would expect that most of our councils will be, give or take, the rate of inflation. But we're not happy with, in a sense, at whatever the level is, we're constantly seeking savings, which is why we're so focused on these key issues. What we do know is that there's a long way to go. There's a lot to achieve, and we're absolutely resolute. We will make whatever changes are required in order to reform local government to give better value for our customers, council taxpayers and voters. So 12 minutes in, we're going to come back to you on the 18th minute of our 90-minute match in 3 months' time to update you on progress. So that's where we are. And as always, we're delighted to take questions from our friends on the touchline in the media, starting with the BBC. Nick Eardley is here. Nick.
Thank you, Richard. Can I ask you a bit more about council tax? What are you saying to reform council leaders who are thinking of putting council tax up by considerably more than inflation? And what do you say to voters who think that your job is to bring council tax down? And if I may, just the second one on the Home Secretary's statement in the Commons later. The government's promising what it says will be one of the biggest shake-ups to the asylum system in a generation. Do you think it goes far enough, and will you vote for it in Parliament?
So on your first point, then, with regard to council tax, look, in a sense, I think people have got ahead of themselves. We're working closely with all the councillors, the leaders, helping identify savings. There's a lot to be discussed about employer contributions. There's a lot of work to go. I think some of the numbers that have been banded around are just wrong. But ultimately, of course, we're here to help and advise. It comes down to the elected councillors. They have to make the final judgment. There's that old expression, advisors advise, directors decide. And in this instance, it's the council leaders and their elected councillors that make the final decision at the final moment, which is some way ahead. But as I say, plus or minus the rate of inflation, which at the moment is give or take 3.7, 3.8%. Some people think it may drop, who knows. With regard to the Home Secretary, she's beginning to sound as though she's sort of putting an application for vetting to join Reform. The reality is, however well-intentioned the Home Secretary is, A, she hasn't got the support and confidence of her own party, but B, while still being a member of the European Convention on Human Rights and still having the Human Rights Act in its current form, she just won't be able to deliver what she's talking about. I do think it's slightly ironic. If we had said 2 months ago in our party conference what she said over the weekend, we'd been caused all sorts of nasty, beastly names. But I'm sure she's well-intentioned, but I don't think it'll amount to a row of beans. Olivia Utley, GB News.
Thanks. I understand that individual councils need to make individual decisions on council tax, but your leader, Nigel Farage, said that doubling council tax on second homes was madness, which makes it sound as though Reform is ideologically opposed to doing that. Can you reassure second homeowners that that's not something you'll be doing in your councils?
Thank you. So look, at the end of the day, individual councils will make their own individual judgments. This is a democracy, it's not a dictatorship. They welcome our thoughts and advice and guidance. And there may well be specific reasons why specific councils make specific judgments. Overall, the key focus has to be on getting best value so you keep these bills as low as possible. If we achieve the sort of things and potential and the savings when you change legislation and the like that I've talked about and will continue to talk about, then actually I think we're into a whole different space about where council tax bills really should be. So that's the reality. Ultimately, every council is slightly different. It's got its own unique characteristics. And for those of you who think we've only got one flagship council, they're all flagships in our eyes. Carl Dinan from ITV News.
Thanks, Richard. Carl Dinan from ITV News. If I can take you back to the migration announcement that we know is coming later today, do you agree with the Home Secretary that illegal migration is tearing Britain apart, or do you think she's agreeing with you?
Well, I think she is talking the language of concerned Reform voters, members, and elected representatives. And she's reflecting the concern. If you talk to anybody on any high street up and down the country, they are deeply, deeply concerned about illegal migration, the scale and speed of legal migration, and the scale of illegality and criminality on every high street. And the BBC did a splendid job following up what I said 3 years ago about Turkish barbershops and money laundering on our high streets. And it's of a colossal scale. And so those are the genuine concerns of ordinary folk who know that something is very, very badly wrong, where you've got shops, barbershops, vape shops, mini-marts appearing on every high street, clearly staffed by people who are probably on the most minimum level of wage, way below the actual legal minimum wage. And that's of concern to everybody. And when there's no customers going in, you think, how can it stay afloat? So, yeah, it's a real problem. It's a real concern for everybody. Rob Powell, Sky News.
Hi, thank you very much. It hasn't been smooth sailing in all of your council areas. I wonder why you think you've lost quite so many councils in Kent. I wonder if the leader of Kent might like to comment on that as well. And just on migration, what the language we're getting from the Home Secretary is a lot tougher than we're used to from this Labour government. Are you a bit worried that this new hardline Home Secretary might succeed? Has she shot your fox?
Thank you. So look, with regard to councillors, look, councillors come and go. We've welcomed lots of defections to reform from all over the place, but ultimately, people have to abide by our principles and our values, and we are a team. We're a large family, and like all families, we have our debates, our discussions, our excitements, but those are always best played out behind closed doors. And when you've got 1,000 councillors, give or take, or just under, stuff will happen. But when you look at the results we're getting, as I mentioned last Thursday and week in, week out, I think the voters are speaking at the ballot box. They want more reform, not less reform. With regard to the Home Secretary, we wish her well on behalf of the country. Migration, illegal migration, is the #1 concern, without question. Has she shot our fox? No, far from it. What we've done is we've essentially become the mainstream of the debate, and they're all trying to play catch-up. But we're still the most trusted party under Nigel's leadership with regard to migration, because actually we're the first people who have the courage to talk about it. And I think we've got a track record of being seen to do what we say and have confidence. So there's a long way to go. The people would love the Home Secretary to deliver what she's talked about, but when she's already been attacked by her own side, more than by us, she's got a problem. Martin Beck for the Daily Mail.
Thank you, Richard. One of your councils, Leicestershire, announced recently it's paying consultants £1.4 million to carry out a cost-cutting review. Is that something that you agree with, or do you think your DOGE unit could do the same for free? Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Look, the point is no one has a monopoly of good ideas. And inevitably, we actually want competition amongst ourselves to find out who's got the best idea on saving which process, using which AI, what smarter process. And the leader of Leicestershire County Council was absolutely clear that these consultants, they thought they could save tens and tens and tens of millions of pounds, possibly up to 75 to 100. Well, frankly, if they achieve that, then it's cheap at the price. If they fail, then there is a very substantial rebate. So, I think, in a sense, that's what it's all about. We'll do great work internally, we'll bring in consultants, and that's where we're going. So, we wish them well. And there are many other consultants who are approaching us, as you can imagine, and in a sense, it's a case of choosing who do we think is actually going to deliver. So, the Telegraph, Tony Diver.
Thank you, Richard. Tony Diver from the Telegraph. Can I ask you a bit more about this point that you made on parents who are trying to dodge VAT on private schools by having their children signed up as SEND? Can you just explain exactly how that works? And do you think there should be consequences for solicitors who participate in that? And can I just ask one more on the immigration, just really directly, will Reform UK vote for these proposals if they're tabled in the House? Will you give them your votes?
So look, this is what happens when, smart people will find a way around daft legislation. And this is the inevitable consequences of Labour's absurd policy of charging VAT on independent school fees. It's raising the square root of not a lot, and now actually it turns out it's costing vast amounts. So the best thing the Labour government could do, alongside other reforms to send, is to scrap VAT on school fees, which is it's not generating anything. It's imposing greater pressure on schools and greater pressure on the SEND system. Look, with regard to the Home Secretary's proposals, let's see what is brought forward. I mean, who knows? She might need our support to get it through. Christian Calgie from The Express.
Hi, Richard. Very simply, does Reform agree with the latest announcement we heard this morning from the Home Secretary over plans to nick watches and jewellery and heirlooms from migrants who arrive illegally.
Yes, I mean, I don't know whether that's been properly reported or what. I think what people's overriding concern is if someone can pay a couple of £1,000s to a people smuggler to get a boat to enter this country illegally, I mean, bluntly, why should the British taxpayer pay any legal aid to them? You know, they've broken into the country. If they've got that money to pay a people smuggler, well, then they can find a friendly lawyer or a nice charity who will do the work for them. Why should the taxpayer pay? It's not right. It's costing us an absolute fortune, and it's the most needy in British society who suffer the consequences. Ted Hennessy, PA.
Hello. What can reform do to tackle what you describe as the colossal overdiagnosis of children with conditions such as ADHD? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So from the experts and the teachers that I've spoken to and the officers, the best thing to do actually is to push it, almost all of it, back to the schools. The schools know best, the teachers know best, and to stop labelling people. Just say, you need a bit of extra support. You might need a bit of extra time. You've got to the mad situation now where children who don't have any form of label are now starting to feel left out. They're feeling that, in inverted commas, they're the normal minority. This is insane. And that it's becoming a sort of school joke. And I'll just raise one more point. The sight of children in classes wearing ear defenders, I'm sorry. This is just insane. It's got to stop. The teachers want it to stop. The heads want it to stop. It's not the right way forwards. And I just repeat, the simple conclusion, the simple overall summary is that outcomes are getting worse. And there's, in a sense, the reason why a trial is probably the right way to go is actually, given where it's got to, much better to try something for a year, 18 months, see what's working and what needs tweaking, than take ever more years before coming up what you think is the perfect legislation. And that's our offer to the government. Noah Keat at Politico.
Thank you very much. Along with SEND, clearly another huge part of any council's expenditure is social care. How optimistic are you about the Louise Casey Commission on adult social care being effective and being successful? Clearly there have been some cross-party talks at a national level. Do you think they can work and go any further, or will, like lots of these cases, it get kicked down the road?
We're not in favour of kicking anything down the road, and we're delighted to work on a cross-party basis, seeing the experiences that we're having in our 12 councils, and we're working with new providers, different providers who think they can provide a better service in a different way, more cost effectively, and in a sense, the beneficiaries are those most in need. And that's why governments mustn't kick it down the road. Try things, do things differently, welcome new ideas, changes to practice, smarter processes. All these things are what's needed, and I think what voters want. They don't want things kicked down the road. Lucy White, Bloomberg.
Thanks, Richard. Given that some of my colleagues have already alluded to that you have faced hurdles with the DOGE experience so far, how much do you think, and what lessons do you think could be transferred from your local council experience to if you were to face these same issues at a central government level? And how might you combat some of the backlash that you're likely to face at a central government level to making those same types of cuts and savings?
Thank you. Well, look, we are, at all stages in life, we never stop learning, and we should have the courage to accept that. And we're learning those who are being enormously helpful and those who might have a little more sort of, shall I call it, questions. That's fine. And I think that as we keep making progress, if we do what we're intending to do, which is provide better service, better value, then more voters will vote for us, and ultimately a general election that we intend to win and win big, then all of those in the public sector need to recognise that's the will of the people. And we can't carry on like this. I mean, I talked earlier about councils going bust. The country is going bust. We've got no GDP growth. We've borrowed 100 billion in 6 months. The bond market's pretty upset last Friday when they realised that the Chancellor has not a clue what she's doing and how to create growth and how to stop spending. So I would say to everybody in the public sector, actually reform is needed, change is needed, work with us, let's deliver that, let's use smarter processes, let's use the excitements of AI, and we can deliver better value and get this country and this economy growing again. We all remember 2.5%, 3.5% 20, 30 years ago. We can do that again. Otherwise, it's not looking good. Tim Stanley, the Daily Tea.
Oh, I've knocked my coffee over. Sorry.
Jennifer Williams.
Hi, hello.
Two microphones.
It's like I'm giving the press conference, isn't it? On immigration, Thatcher said that the best tribute to her was Tony Blair. Is the Home Secretary a tribute to reform? And on local government, we know that we are where we are because of austerity, right? Because of cuts made by the coalition government, by people like Danny Kruger over there, that starved local government of money, and also because there were restrictions placed upon their ability to raise tax. So, given your experience of local government, given you can see the squeeze on things like social care, will you repudiate austerity economics? And if you're elected to national government, will you do the obvious thing and give more money to local government to help them to look after their people?
So with regard to your first point, look, ultimately, let's see what the Home Secretary delivers. But, copying is the greatest form of flattery. And we like to lead fashion, we don't follow it. And I think that's what the Home Secretary is doing. With regard to the councils, absolutely the opposite of your diagnosis, which is totally fundamentally flawed. It is just the callous waste of money on processes and things and reports and reviews and assessments that are not needed. It is the issue of gold-plated defined benefit pension schemes that we have to have an open, honest discussion about for future employees. We're in danger of the whole UK economy becoming an unfunded pension liability with flaps. We just don't need to do a whole bunch of stuff that is being done. And that's how you make progress in the private sector, when you eradicate unnecessary processes, unnecessary cost centres, then all of a sudden you find actually you don't need to charge as much for a better product. And just imagine if we could go back to weekly bin collections. Instead, we hear from councils that they've got to do new food collections with a new different bin, which may well require a different lorry, at the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds. Is that going to improve our bin collections? I'm not really sure. So it's like the enhanced packaging tax this November. It's absurd. It's totally unnecessary. All of these things, scale it back, do what needs to be done, and do it well, do it properly. So I hear the question, but your diagnosis is 100% wrong. Jennifer Williams, the Financial Times.
Hello, thanks. On SEND, I wondered if you could just provide a bit more detail about what reform would do to reduce the overdiagnosis of conditions like neurodivergence, and would that include repealing national legislation that has sort of helped lead to an increase in ECHPs? And on local government more broadly, you said that this is not a dictatorship in terms of reform, but you have also listed quite a few examples where you've personally intervened on financial decisions at council level. So who's actually politically running these councils? Is it the leaders or is it you? Thanks.
Thank you. So with regard to EHCPs and things, yes, we're recommending to the government that the legal requirement by statute to carry out an annual review of EHCPs is unnecessary. It's $2 to $4 grand a pop, and it's consuming so much time and not providing any extra benefit in the vast, vast, vast majority of cases to the youngster, to the child. And I'm advised by the experts once every key stage is, as a general rule, is enough. And that's why I say, look, to the government, accept our offer, do a cross-party trial basis and see what works. And I think we've got to have the courage to say, trust our teachers and the schools more. In a sense, it's sort of devolving the responsibility and power to those in the classroom and their seniors, as opposed to what you've got at the moment is a very adversarial relationship between the parent and the council and then the teachers and the psychologists. We don't need this adversarial relationship. Make it a partnership at the classroom level is what I would say. With regard to my own input, look, it's called experience, wisdom, advice, and when my advice is sought, I'm delighted to give it, and when people think they know best, that's absolutely fine too. But I have got sort of, crikey, 40 years of experience in real estate, so I'm not surprised when one or two people pick up the phone and say, Richard, do you think this is a good deal or a bad deal? And if it's a good deal, great. If it's a bad deal, I'll say so. So, thank you. Peter Walker, The Guardian.
Hi. Hello. Richard, since we had so many questions about councils, can I ask about something else? The new head of your student organisation, the former academic Matthew Goodwin, has argued repeatedly on X that people from minority ethnic backgrounds are not necessarily British. He's defended this to us and said he completely stands by that point of view. This is a sort of view which was normally associated with the far right. Nigel has had a very close firewall on people and views of the far right, keeping out of his organisations. Has that now gone, or do you agree with Matthew?
I just think your assessment is completely wrong. Matthew is putting out some really important messaging. You may or may not agree with all of it, any of it, or none of it. But that's the joy of free speech, that's the joy of challenge. And the very fact that reform has moved the whole debate on illegal immigration, legal immigration, shows that actually we're in touch with the wishes of the people. I know people have to sort of, all these sort of smear labels. I just think the message from the voters, voting for us in record numbers, tells a story. People have had enough of their hospitality, their generosity being ripped off and abused.
So do you agree with Matthew?
I can agree with Matthew on lots of things. Life would be boring if you agreed with absolutely everything. What would we talk about? But that takes me to last, but definitely not least, from the Mirror, my friends at the Mirror, Sophie Huskisson.
Hi, thank you, Richard. So I just wanted to pick up in your speech where you spoke about someone you knew in their 20s being labelled and getting medication. You were worried they'd be on medication for life. Obviously, I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about there, but I just wondered if you could set out your position on maybe, was it children with SEND that you were referring to having medication? And a second, if I may, since last YouGov polling last week found 60% of people in Britain support net zero policies. Do you admit that reform's plans to scrap net zero are not in line with what the public wants?
So, look, with regard to the individual case I mentioned, if someone's being really successful, they've gone all the way through school, and in a sense they've benefited from the extra support in the classroom that I touched on just now, to then be told you've got a problem in your 20s, which requires medication, and that might be for the long term, you start to question, what's going on here? Is it the vested interest of the pharma companies? Is it the vested interest of the psychologists wanting more work? I mean, this is a successful young individual. It's beyond me. When that individual says to me, what's going on? It cuts pretty deep. And I'm thinking, well, if that's just one example, and then you're hearing of children, and I mustn't generalize, there are cases where it is appropriate. I just feel that there's an overdiagnosis, there's an over-medication, and we have to ask deep searching questions on what's going on here. With regard to net stupid zero, well, again, we've moved the debate. 3 years ago, I was not allowed to talk about it at all. But now, actually, I think voters are voting with their feet. The fact that we're winning all of these by-elections, and I hear your poll, well, polls are polls. I know you'll throw that back at me, but the reality is, when an energy boss admitted 3 or 4 weeks ago that even if the price of gas goes to zero, the price of electricity bills at the next election will be equal or higher than they currently are, you know we've got a problem. When a senior industrialist says to me, we are in danger of losing 1 million industrial jobs before 2030, you know we've got a problem. When someone else says to me that the vast majority of the UK automotive market may struggle against overseas competition from EV vehicles, that could be 500,000 jobs alone, you know we've got a problem. So is everybody agreeing with us on that? No. Have we got a problem? Absolutely. And even the government accepts there's a major problem with energy prices. And if we don't change course, there's nothing they can do about it. One last.
Thank you, Mr. Tice, for taking my question. Benji High with LBC. You've been quoted recently as saying the whole point of DOGE is about the philosophy of saving money. I'm just wondering how much of this is optics, press conferences and backdrops and such, versus hard graft. Have you actually carried out audit work on reforms councils? Do you have a data sharing arrangement with Kent, for instance? And secondly, we've been speaking to one of the Kent councillors who was suspended in the wake of that leaked call. He's called the local party leadership toxic. LBC has uncovered numerous examples of reform councillors using a choice language on social media. I'm just wondering whether this vision that you're trying to sell is already tainted.
Far from it. I think what we've shown today is that we're making great progress. I mean, we've identified on the pensions issue something that no one else has talked about because we're just smarter and better. And, I mean, we don't spend all week doing press conferences. I can tell you, this great team and everybody else, the work that is going on, it's truly humbling, actually. It's 24/7. When I message people at 5:30 in the morning, the amount of times I get a rapid reply and the expertise we've got. So across the board, we're making great progress. And DOGE is a philosophy of saving money that I say to all of our councillors, any brilliant idea that you can have to help save money, that is what we've got to do. And with regard to those who've left our family, it's probably not surprising they might have different views and words, and that's fine. That's the nature of it. Politics, it has its joys, its excitements, and occasionally a bit of rough language. You experienced that on the football pitch as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for being here.